Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this webinar of the National Bank of Belgium on the practical modalities for the reporting related to the Digital Operational Resilience Act, also known as DORA. My name is Thomas Plonteux, and I'm responsible for IT risk supervision at the National Bank of Belgium. And in this capacity, I was, and I still am, heavily involved in the negotiations and preparations for DORA. I now briefly pass on the word to my colleague Mark so that he can also introduce himself.
Thank you, Thomas. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Also welcome on my behalf. So my name is Mark Kremers. I've been working for many years already as a coordinator of supervisory data collection. This is also the reason why I'm involved in the DORA project. So I will guide you through the OneGate application for the both components of the DORA project. But I give the floor back to Thomas for his introduction to the topic.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And I think we can go to the next slide. So what are our objectives for today? Well, we intend to communicate on the implementation choices of the National Bank of Belgium for both the reporting of the registers of information, which we will address first, and then the reporting of major incident notifications, which we will address afterwards. And we also want to make you aware of specific attention points and some additional requests we have from our site that are particularly relevant at the start of the application of DORA. At the end of this webinar, we have also foreseen some time for questions. I must stress, though, that we will focus on questions that address the practical reporting modalities of DORA. So questions, for instance, on the applicable technical standards, the scope of the reporting, etc. For that, we will have to revert you to the Q&A procedure of the ESAs and the European Commission. If you have a question, please share it with us via the Q&A button, and we will then try to address it afterwards, after our presentation. And if not possible, we will try to provide you with a response via our website, later on. We can then go immediately to slide 4. And on this slide, you find a quick recap of what the DORA regulation entails. Given that you are in this webinar, I take it for granted that you already are familiar with DORA. But I guess the most important part on this slide is the application date of January 17, 2025. That is what really is important here for now for this webinar. So then we can go to slide 5. And here you find a status update on the level 2 standards that support the DORA regulation. The document highlights in yellow, the documents that are highlighted in yellow are the most important for today's session. As you can see, 2 of them are in green, meaning that they are formally adopted and published in the official journal of the European Union. 2 other documents have reportedly been adopted, but were not yet published in the official journal. And it is, as of today, not entirely certain that they will be so by the 17th of January 2025. Then we can go to slide 6. And this slide provides an overview of the different actions we have undertaken to prepare the Belgian financial sector and the National Bank itself for the DORA implementation. As you can see, we undertook some initiatives to create awareness on the DORA regulation and to assess preparedness on your side. And clearly today's talk will focus mostly on the 4th item, so the IT tools and processes. Next slide, please. So before I hand over the word to Mark for his first intervention, let me briefly list some attention points that are relevant for both DORA reporting items. First, we shared 2 draft circulars for consultation with Febelfin, Assuralia, and Pay Belgium, mostly to communicate to the sector on the MBB's implementation choices as soon as possible, also in attendance of the publication of the relevant EU standards. The final versions of these circulars will be published once also the relevant technical standards related to incident reporting are published in the EU official journal. As already indicated, this might be only after 17 January 2025. We don't know yet. Then another important point, financial entities will have to identify themselves in the reports with a lei code. If your institution does not have one, this is the time to acquire it. Some specific entities are out of scope of DORA. This is, for instance, true for third country branches and also for some insurance undertakings that are exempted from Solvency II legislation. And notice, nevertheless, that some of these entities have subscribed themselves for this webinar, so please be aware that this webinar might be a bit less relevant for you. As for the reporting languages in both reportings, we will take a flexible approach. You can report in one of the official Belgian languages, but the reporting in English will, of course, also facilitate the further dissemination to, for instance, the European supervisory authorities, other member states, the European Central Bank, where this is applicable. I also noticed via the subscriptions that it is sometimes not clear for you what is the official name and the official type of institution that is linked to your MBB license. And this is nevertheless important in those reportings. So, for instance, some institutions, for instance, mistakenly think that they are both a credit institution and a payment institution. So be a bit careful about this in your reportings. Then I now hand over to Mark for an explanation on how to acquire access in our reporting platform, OneGate.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Let me guide you indeed through the OneGate application. I guess that many of you are already familiar with OneGate because it is used for many reportings, both for supervisory and statistical reasons. But it seems useful to give a high-level overview anyway today for DORA. So first of all, you need an access to a new domain DOR that is already available in the application. I also provide you here with a general link to OneGate in case you are not aware of the existence of our collection tool. As many of you know, access management has become the full responsibility of the reporting agent, so the declarer itself. Within your company, there are many or one administrator that can guide you through the application and give you access to OneGate and the different domains that might be relevant for you. I provide you here with a number of documentation links for the two authentication possibilities within OneGate. On the one hand, you have SESAM, which is well known with the EID and It's Me. And you can even find a specific webinar on our own site with regard to SESAM and OneGate. And alternatively, you can buy an electronic certificate from Global Sign, Isabel, Quo Vadis, or Lux Trust. But for both options, the principle remains that it is up to you to manage your access of your colleagues. There is also a user manual for the reporting agent with regard to the use of OneGate. So there is a quick start guide that should be sufficient. It's only a few pages, but that is sufficient for the reporting of DORA, I think. There is also a full manual with extensive documentation on the use of OneGate, but that may lead somewhat too far for a reporting like DORA. So you can see there is a lot of documentation on our site. Nonetheless, if you would have questions with regard to access, authorization, authentication, you can always send an email to the well-known address OneGate access.onegate@nbb.be. And you can also phone them during certain business hours as indicated on the slide. Now, when you enter OneGate, you will see a very basic homepage. On the one hand, you will be able to upload a file. That means that you have to generate an XML or XBRL file from software within your company, and then you can simply drop it here. Within the file exchange logging that is available on the screen, you can also consult past submissions and your actual submissions. The alternative way to consult the report is by domain or by due date. When you click on the reports by domain, for instance, you see the domains that are relevant for you, the domains to which you have access in OneGate. And for instance, we have here already foreseen the DOR domain for DORA, in which we have here in the screenshot only the register of information, which is one of the two components within DORA that we will explain later on. If you click on the report, you will get to an overview of the years and you see all the months within a given year. You can select the period that is relevant for you. In this case, on the screen, you can see that the end of December 2023 was relevant for the Register of Information. We can also see on the screen that 15 templates have been reported and they are all closed. So the status is indicated on the screen. If you want to see the detail of that month, you simply click on the month and you enter some kind of control panel. In this control panel, you see the templates individually. You can select one of the templates and you see immediately which actions are available for the given template. And you can also enter the template to see the usual interface in which you can consult the data you have reported via file upload, or you can introduce the data yourself. I simply highlight here also very quickly that this is a list of branches. In case you have multiple branches, it is of course possible to add lines into the table, and you can simply add a number of rows. Whether you use data entry to add these branches depends of course on the number of branches. If you have to introduce a few branches, that is quite easy, quite straightforward. If you have hundreds of branches, I would recommend to use another option that we will discuss later on. In the end, when you have introduced all of your information in the templates, the goal is to get an open OK status everywhere for every form, as you can see here on the slide. That means that you are able to close the report because there are no mistakes in your forms, there are no issues left. And that is the ultimate goal of your reporting obligation, is to complete the process by closing the report. That is very important. I will come back to that furthermore in the rest of my presentations. I also indicated on this slide the option to provide a nihil declaration for a form. That simply implies that the form for you contains only 0 positions. So it is not necessary to report those zeros. You can simply declare the whole form as nihil, which is useful if in the end you have a number of forms that you all together want to declare as nihil to complete the report, and that will enable you to close the report and to fill your reporting obligations correctly. So this brings me somewhat to the end of the general overview of the OneGate tool. So now I go back to Thomas for the specific parts within the DORA regulation, and he will start with the business point of view of the Register of Information.
Thank you, Mark. And please let me remind you that if you already have questions, you can put them in the Q&A so that we can treat them later on. Let us then first look at the first reporting, the Register of Information. I start with the legal references here on the slide for this reporting, both in the DORA Level 1 text, and also there are some additional provisions that are provided via the Accompanying Implementing Act that was recently published by the Commission. The following types of entities will send their register to the National Bank of Belgium: less significant credit institutions, stockbrokers, insurance and reinsurance undertakings, payment institutions, electronic money institutions, and central security depositories. The bank will typically require the register at the highest level of consolidation that is still under MBB supervision, and normally it will do so once a year. The first collection, I think Mark already mentioned this, will have a deadline of April 30th, 2025, with a reference date of March 31st, 2025. Furthermore, we will have the obligation to disseminate this register to the European supervisory authorities if there is no higher level of consolidation elsewhere within the European Union. Then we go to slide 17, and on this slide you will find some further attention points regarding this reporting. So the first point on reporting on the highest level of consolidation I already explained a bit. So be careful. In some cases, this might mean that your financial group has to send multiple registers to multiple competent authorities. For instance, for its banking entities to the European Central Bank, for its insurance undertakings to the National Bank of Belgium, and then, for instance, for an asset company to the FSMA here in Belgium. In line with the ECB approach, the bank has the ambition to eventually request all dependencies on third parties, whether or not they are supported by ICT services, via a unique and unified register and portal. to the extent, of course, that reporting of such dependencies is provided for in the applicable regulations. In the meantime, we will try to refrain from requesting the same information multiple times. So financial entities will not be requested to report dependencies already reported via the register of information, still via a different channel or collection. I also already briefly mentioned the third point. Be careful. It is not because you have a higher level of consolidation elsewhere in the European Union that you're not supposed to report a register for the institution under MEB supervision to us. The point is that we will not further disseminate this register to the European supervisory authorities to avoid that they would receive the same information twice. For the fourth point, I'm sure Mark will come back to this, but it is important to understand that unlike the 2024 dry run exercise, the European Banking Authority will not support a tool that will allow for the conversion of Excel to the requested format. So please keep this in mind. And lastly, it's probably worth mentioning here that the European supervisory authorities will organize an information workshop on the 18th of December 2024 to discuss the outcomes of the dry run exercise and to provide further information relevant for the preparation of the register. And then I go back to Mark.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. I will first start with the European context. It is a European project, of course, and the 3 European supervisory authorities are involved in the process. But for each project, there is a different authority who has somewhat the lead in the project. So for the registers of information, that is the EBA, the European Banking Authority. And they have a lot of experience with reporting in XBRL. I can refer to the FINREP and COREP frameworks that are yearly updated on their website. So they had the preference to do the whole reporting chain in XBRL. And so they provide us with a taxonomy for DORA registers of information. What is new in this context is that it is for us as National Bank of Belgium mandatory to provide the EBA with an XBRL CSV format. So that is quite a new technology within the context of XBRL reporting that we will have to use to forward the data from the National Bank of Belgium to the European authorities. I mentioned this here because it is also relevant for you because we will open up this option for you as well. So I will go through the next slides and show you that you have different possibilities to introduce the data in our system, and XBRL CSV will be one of them optionally for you to use in case you would opt to do so. As Thomas mentioned, there has been a dry run at the end of August 2024, so rather recently, based on a taxonomy published by the EBA. Only a limited sample of institutions was involved in Europe. And you can find all of the information via the website that is published on the slide. This website contains representative material to prepare for DORA, but I must mention 2 important differences. First of all, it was a very specific taxonomy that was used for the dry run. So that taxonomy has only been used for the dry run and will never be used again. So you can use the taxonomy as an illustration, but it will not be the taxonomy that we will use in the production environment. That's very important. And secondly, as Thomas mentioned, the conversion tool to convert the Excel templates to the requested XBRL CSV format will no longer be supported, and it will not work with the new taxonomy. So you need to be ready to work with XBRL CSV on your own side because the ESAs will not help you with a conversion tool. Very important to take that into account in case you want to automate your reporting and upload an XBRL CSV file to OneGate. With regard to the reporting frameworks of the EBA, we will integrate the DORA taxonomy within the reporting framework 4.0. Actually, for reporting framework 4.0, a draft version is already available. It has been published by the end of October, 23rd of October, it was published. And the final taxonomy, which will also be part of 4.0, will be published on the 19th of December or around the 19th of December. And I repeat once more that no conversion tool will be provided by the European authorities. I didn't mention it yet, but I will repeat it, what Thomas has highlighted in his slide, that the first reference date will only be 31st of March 2025 with a deadline 1 month later. So this gives you still some time to prepare and to be ready in time for the reporting in our production tool in April. Now we enter a little bit into the Belgian context, of course, which is more interesting for you, I hope. We have provided you with a specific website for the domain DOR, as we do usually for the different domains in OneGate. It is always available in 3 languages. You will find there already some information, but not all of it, because we are not yet in the possession of all the necessary technical artifacts to publish on our own website. So it is not yet finalized, but you can already find some information there. As I said, for our approach in Belgium, we will let you use XBRL CSV as well, but also all the other options will be available for DORA reporting. So you will be able to use data entry via the usual interface to introduce the necessary information elements in the templates. You can also use the regular CSV. That is not XBRL CSV, it is regular CSV that you can prepare on your site based on an Excel template, for instance, export in CSV, and then upload per OneGate form each time. It is important to highlight that the comma-separated version here contains a semicolon as a separator. So that is specifically for OneGate very relevant to take that into account. And you see that the structure is quite straightforward. It simply copies the columns within an Excel file. Only the semicolons make the separator between the information within the columns. Then finally, an option that is well known for many supervised institutions is XBRL XML. So that is a feature that will still be available, even though we will allow XBRL CSV as well. So we will allow for both options simultaneously for DORA. So depending on your tools, on your in-house experience, you are free to opt for the best option that suits you. That is the best cost efficient in your situation. And finally, of course, the fourth option is new, that is XBRL CSV. I will go a little bit into detail of this new technology to show you that it's quite easy to work with XBRL CSV. And so you are aware that this is an option that we will use for DORA Register of Information as well. Just for your information, because you may not be familiar with XBRL at all, there is a website created by volunteers that is called Eurofiling, and there is a specific chapter on XBRL solutions in the European market that may be interesting for you to discover in case you want to implement XBRL on your site. I continue with a small hint, a suggestion. When you are within OneGate, within your control panel, you have always the option to export the data that are there, or even an empty form can be exported, but of course it's more relevant and more interesting if you export a completed form. And you can export it in all the different formats. You can use the XBRL XML option, the XBRL CSV option, or the regular CSV option to export the data in an uploadable format. The Excel option is available as well for export, but that is not available for import in OneGate. So that is only to visualize your data in an Excel environment. As I said, I start with a little chapter on XBRL CSV. I highlight immediately that on the website of XBRL International, there is a tutorial and some examples that is quite easy to go through. You really don't have to be an IT specialist to go through the tutorial, and it can be very instructive for you to learn how we can work with XBRL CSV in an XBRL context where a taxonomy is available underlying the reporting framework. In XBRL CSV, you must deliver us with a zip file that contains a number of folders. The zip file has been constructed according to the specifications of XBRL International, according to the report package 1.0 for the guys who are interested in that. Within the zip file, there are a number of files that are necessary to have a valid zip file according to this specification, and I will go through all of them individually to show them what is included and to show you that it's quite straightforward to work with it and that you do not need necessarily a conversion tool provided by the European authorities. It's something you could do on your side as well, maybe by buying some software or by developing it in-house. So first of all, there is the report.json file that is included in the reports folder. I also highlight that the folder name can be chosen freely on your side. So there is no obligation to use a given folder name. So it can be something that you choose. Then you can zip this folder name and we come back to the naming convention for the zip file. But for the folder name, there is no naming convention at this time. So you can choose it on your side according to your wishes. So as I said, the first file is the report.json file. It contains a schema ref, which is the reference to the taxonomy. The schema ref that is highlighted on the screen right now is the schema ref of the dry run taxonomy. So this will not be the final reference that you have to use in production environment, but it gives you an indication of the content of the file, which is very straightforward and which you can reuse in every upload, of course, that you do for the DORA Register of Information in the month of April. Subsequently, there is the file with the parameters. This is more efficient in XBRL CSV than in XBRL XML because a lot of information is centralized within this file, while in XBRL XML, it is scattered throughout the file in different contexts, in different facts. So you have to repeat it in every context or in every fact. That is not the case here. It is all centralized within one simple file that is quite easy to read as well. So you start with the entity ID, which in this case is the legal entity identifier that is used in the screenshot. There is the reference period. Let us assume that is, for instance, the 31st of March 2025. Which is the real reference date for the Register of Information in production environment soon. There is the base currency. The DORA report Register of Information is to be reported in euro. So the base currency is euro throughout all the facts that are available within the report. So you only have to mention it once. And then you have the 4 decimals property that are usually available on each fact that are now centralized within this file and can be reused for all the facts within the zip file. So that is quite straightforward, I think. Next is a very important feature within XBRL that is equally important in XBRL CSV and XBRL XML. That is the filing indicators file. So there you will list all the templates within the report. So this is the list of templates within the DORA Register of Information report. And then you indicate which templates you want to report. So it's your intention to report, for instance, all those templates except B0203 and B0301. Then you indicate a false value for those two and a true value for all the rest. It's very important to do this correctly because this is crucial for the validation process. The templates with a false filing indicator will not trigger any validation rules. They will automatically be accepted as not reported and will be ignored in the rest of the process. So that is only relevant in case you think the template does not apply to you or you are below a certain threshold, for instance. You don't have to report the template. Then you can simply indicate that for you, this has a false filing indicator and the validation rules will not be triggered. The template will actually be completely ignored. So very important that this file is correct and representative for your situation at the reference date. Then the bulk of the zip file will be made out of the templates, out of the tables. So for every table there exists, you need to provide us with a CSV file with the data. So this is where the data are centralized. I give here a very simple example for the first template within the DORA Register of Information, in which you can see that there are 6 columns, each filled in with their value. And if you compare that with the regular CSV that I've shown a few minutes ago, you can see that it is identical except for the separator. So what you use regular CSV via upload via the control panel in OneGate, or you combine it with an XBRL CSV, it will be the same effort for you, I think, to create the CSV files that are necessary for every template, because the content is exactly the same. A technical detail, because this is something that we encountered during the dry run, you have to escape the separator. This is somewhat technical, but if you use within a column the separator during some text paragraph, for instance, the system will consider the separator, of course, as a separator, and the rest of the text will be considered as a new column, which will make your file invalid because there will be too many columns. There is a very easy way to escape it, but as many of you were not familiar with this procedure, I highlighted here on the screen. You can simply put it, the whole text, between double quotes, and then you can use the separator within the text without having the system considering it to be a new column. So that is just a small suggestion to take into account if you start working with CSV. And then finally, there is an other folder within the global folder that is meta-inf that contains only one file, the report package, and it's simply an indication of which report package that is used. Here it's the 2023 version that you have to use as well for the DORA reporting in production environment. And that is important for our XBRL validator to know against which package he needs to validate the zip file. So that is why it is included here. And it's always the same, so it's stable. So not a big effort to integrate that within our XBRL CSV reporting implementation. So when I provide you here with the total overview of XBRL CSV, you can acknowledge that it's not very complicated, it's not very complex, it's even human readable to a certain extent, which makes it a little bit easier to solve issues in the course of the reporting process. So I would encourage you to at least do some tests with XBRL CSV, because it is a useful option that will be available for the DORA registers of information next year when you can report it in our OneGate environment. As I already mentioned shortly, we need to impose a OneGate naming convention for XBRL CSV, because contrary to XBRL XML, there is no OneGate envelope that is used. So for XBRL XML, as you may know, there is a OneGate envelope that is encompassing the XBRL content, and in the envelope we can indicate certain parameters that are useful for a OneGate to interpret the content of the file without going into the XBRL. For the CSV file here, that was not really considered appropriate, so we chose another option that is even simpler, I think, towards the sector. That is that we impose a naming convention. So what you need to do is to provide us with this name, and I will go through the different parameters that are integrated within the name. So first of all, the information is already known in the OneGate envelope in case you do XML or XBRL XML reporting, but it's not available within XBRL CSV. So we ask you to provide it within the name. It is first of all the declarer type, which is KBO, which is the company registration number. And then, of course, the declarer ID, the 10 characters of the company registration number, followed by an extension. This is something that was new for a number of companies during the dry run. It is already used for a lot of reportings for the European Central Bank and the European Banking Authority by banks and investment firms. But for the other sectors, it will be new. We require you, it's actually not us who requires you to do that, but it's the EBA who requires you to do that. You must add an extension, which is presented by a dot qualifier and 3 characters to indicate the level of consolidation. It is either solo individual, so int, or it is consolidated basis, so con. So what you have to do in OneGate, because it's automatically available for you when you log on with your KBO, with your company registration number, you will immediately see the alternatives that are available. Maybe it is int and con, maybe it's only int, only con. So that will imply that you will have to do a reporting for int or con or both. And that is visible within OneGate when you click on your active declarer, you choose your company registration number, and you see immediately if other options are available. So you do not need an additional access request for that. It will be there automatically. Then next, there is a number of parameters that is always stable. So you have the recipient institution, that is us, the NDB. You have the OneGate domain, as I explained, that will be DOR. And then you have the report. In this case, for the Register of Information, it will be DORA ROI. So very, very straightforward. This was the naming convention during the dry run. We received the suggestion from you, from a number of you, to allow for some free text, because otherwise every name for every submission will be identical, and that is difficult for tracing back previous submissions. So we allowed for some free text to be added in the naming convention. So as you can see here on the screen, you can add no matter what you want as free text that is indicative for you, that has some meaning for you. You can even include dots, you can include spaces. The only thing we ask you not to use is an underscore, because that is being used as a separator before, and it will be difficult to have a generic naming convention if you start reusing the underscores also in the free text. So that will be forbidden when you upload an XBRL CSV zip file in OneGate. With regard to the reporting process, I start with the validations. Because there is an XBRL taxonomy, the ones used to XBRL reporting, they know that a lot of information can be found within XBRL. You have a table link base that is the visualization of the templates. You have a definition link base that shows you all the valid combinations of metrics and dimensions. And you have also a formula link base that indicates the assertions, the validation rules that are implemented within the taxonomy. EBA has the habit to produce a separate file with validation rules. I suppose that they will do the same here for the Register of Information, that they will provide us with an Excel file with validation rules, and those will be embedded within the XBRL taxonomy and automatically executed when you upload a file in OneGate. That is also one of the main advantages of XBRL, of course, is that you have the taxonomy on your side as well. You can implement it in your system, and you could validate your document, your report, before you send it to us. Ideally, we even would like you to send only one valid report to the National Bank of Belgium, because that would put less burden on our OneGate application, and you would get faster return, faster feedback when you upload a file. Of course, if you use OneGate to correct your files via trial and error, and you send 25 files a day, then you will be burdening our system, which creates, of course, some queues for yourself and for your colleagues in the application. With regard to the use of identification codes, as Thomas has said, we have the legal entity identifier. There is also the EU ID. We will simply check on the syntax structure, the pattern of those codes within OneGate. So we will simply check that you respect the pattern that is put forward by those codes. And that's the only check that we will do directly within OneGate. An additional check that we will do on top of the taxonomy is a check on the text fields that are used as keys, because we saw in the dry run the situation that I've shown now on the screen, in which two lines were reported that seem identical, but they are not identical because of an invisible space within the key. So here it's not sure whether it is the purpose to have two separate lines or whether there is a small mistake and a space was added unintentionally. And so to avoid this kind of behavior, both on our side as on the European authorities side, we will add a validation rule to avoid preceding and trailing spaces for keys. So in this case, if you report both of them, they will be considered as identical, and one of them will be blocked by our system, and you will never get into this situation, which is very confusing if you want to analyze the data afterwards. Also part of the reporting process is the dissemination component. As Thomas has said, we are collecting the information, but we have to disseminate it. We have to send it to the European authorities. In this case, the dissemination to the EBA is automated. That is already the case for the banks and the investment firms, that they have an automated dissemination procedure, which leads to the situation where the dissemination status, the feedback report from the European authorities, is put at your disposition in OneGate. So that is very transparent, and it is very fast as well, because we do that in real time. That means that you don't have to report to us, then we have to send it to the EBA, we wait for the report again, we have to contact you via email to say what is the issue, you have to correct it again, and it takes a number of working days to get everything correct. Now you get it almost immediately, and you can act upon it, so that in most of the time, in 1-2 working days, the whole reporting process can be closed, not only nationally, but even at the European level. So what I've shown on the slide is where you can retrieve the feedback report. So you have the OneGate feedback report always in the file exchange logging and in the control panel. Now there will be an additional dissemination feedback report that is available also in the file exchange logging and in the control panel. So please consult both of them. What is important, of course, that is a constraint on our side, is that in both reports, you must be error-free or you will not be able to close the report. So you must respect the rules within the OneGate system and within the system of the European authority in order to be able to close the report and don't get reminders for unclosed reports. Some additional considerations with regard to the reporting process. As I said, we can only check the structure of the identifier codes, but the EBA will check the real existence of the legal entity identifier and the EU ID in two systems, GLIVE and BRIS. Unfortunately, the BRIS system is not very user-friendly, it's not very efficient, so it will not be possible to do the validation with the European authorities in real time, just because of the fact that the EU ID checks will be done individually one by one. And if there are 100 EU ID checks or even 1,000, they will have to be checked one by one in the BRIS system. And lucky for us, the EBA has proposed a solution in which they will cache the information of all this interaction. And so after a number of days or weeks, when they have already checked for a lot of EU IDs, the process will become much faster. But that also implies that in the beginning, the reporting process will be very slow on their side. So it may take up to 1 day, is what they said to us last week. So that is very, very slow, which also means that in the beginning, you must take into account a certain delay when you upload a file, not for the OneGate report, that will be available quite soon, but for the EBA validation report, that will take up to some hours, maybe up to 24 hours if we have to believe the EBA estimates. Another lesson from the dry run, the closer to the deadline, the more difficult it will become for you to obtain support from us. So I have to urge you to please prepare to the maximum extent possible and don't come to us with issues 1 day before the deadline. Certainly because the EU ID, it will be very difficult for you to respect the deadline and then our analysts on the business side will not be very happy about it. So please prepare in time and ask us questions maybe 1-2 months before the deadline when we will have more time to help you and your colleagues and not 1 day before the deadline, because then we have only a very limited team with experts that can help you with the most complex issues. So it all comes down to them. So it's only in your best interest to prepare as maximum as possible. To help you prepare, of course, we will open up a testing environment. As usual, we will do that 2 months before the first reference date, which means in this case, the end of January. We are depending on the EBA taxonomy that is supposed to be published on the 19th of December. If they publish it by then, by the end of next week, it will probably allow us to open up the testing environment by mid-January. But as we will explain later on, we are also heavily involved in the other DORA component, which is the major incident reporting that is consuming a lot of our resources right now and is also a top priority. But we will do our best to have it open by mid-January if the taxonomy is published on time. I draw your attention for 2 points. One of them is that you need a different certificate in OneGate Test and OneGate Prod. I know that a lot of you already have access to both of them. So in both of them, it's simply the domain DORA to which you have to extend your access. So that is not a big effort. But in case you have never worked with OneGate Test environment, you need an additional certificate. And finally, the EBA is also building on their side, on their implementation, and it is not clear when they will be fully ready to automate the dissemination feedback flow. So it is possible that when we open our OneGate testing environment, that the dissemination feedback loop is not yet fully in place, and we do not have a clear indication when this will be the case. We hope it will be by the end of January, but it can also be a little bit later. So in either way, please prepare using the OneGate validation because it covers 99% of the validations. So you will be well prepared if your file is accepted by OneGate in the testing environment. Also, as usual, we will open the production environment the first day after the reference date, in this case, the 1st of April 2025. And I highlight once more for this, for the end of this presentation on my side, don't forget to close the report when you're finished reporting. Your validation report contains no more issues, no more errors. not the one-gate validation report and not the EBA validation report, you are able to close the report. Please do so, so we know that your reporting obligation has been fulfilled and our analysts can start analyzing the data without the risk of you intervening in their analysis with unexpected submissions. So please close the report. And I give the floor now back to Thomas for the second part of the DORA reporting framework.
Yes, thank you, Mark. So this concludes the first part of the presentation on the reporting of the registers of information, and we will now move on with the reporting of major ICT-related incidents and significant cyber threats. From at least one reaction in the Q&A, I could see that this was not clear for every participant in the call. So all the previous material was on the register of information. Now we move to the reporting of incidents and cyber threats. So slide 28, here too I provided legal references. As mentioned previously, 2 of the 3 relevant level 2 standards unfortunately have not been officially published yet. Hopefully this will still take place before the 17th of January, but even in case it's not, we intend to go live with the DORA incident reporting as of the 17th of January 2025. As concerns the scope, the main difference with the previous reporting is that we expect also the notifications of significant credit institutions in our one-gate platform. And another difference is that we expect reports for individual legal entities, to the extent, of course, that the reporting criteria are met for such a legal entity. Given the nature of incidents and threats, the reporting happens, of course, ad hoc, and the required information depends, according to the DORA legislation, on the reporting phase. So it's different for an initial report as compared to an intermediate or final report. And lastly, in some cases, we also have here the obligation to share these notifications with the European supervisory authorities, the European Central Bank, or the Center for Cybersecurity Belgium, and that depends on what type of institution you are. Then I suggest we go to slide 29. Here too I shared some important attention points. Major incidents are to be reported via the one-gate platform without exceptions. We have foreseen some backup possibilities for very exceptional cases, but even in those cases, we expect you to fulfill the reporting via one-gate a posteriori, so as soon as this is possible again. As already indicated, the MBB intends to collect major incident notifications per financial entity, not in an aggregated manner. We also get still a few questions on the next point, so it's important to emphasize that the DORA reporting framework fully integrates, so replaces the PSD2 incident reporting for payment service providers and the SSM cyber incident reporting for significant credit institutions as well. The MBB will also disseminate notifications from financial entities in scope of NIS2 to the Center for Cybersecurity Belgium. So a direct notification from your side is therefore not needed. Another important point is the following. In case you are not sure whether your incident meets the classification criteria, you report. It's always possible afterwards to reclassify the incident, but in case of doubt, we prefer you to report. And then to conclude the slide, I have 2 more important messages. We expect you all to submit before the 10th of January 2025 a mock-up incident notification, at least the initial version of it, to demonstrate your capability of doing so in terms of access and credentials. And we also expect you to share the contact details of at least 2 persons within your organization whom we may contact in case of a systemic ICT or cyber-related incident, and we will require you to update this data on a quarterly basis. And then I pass on the word again to Mark.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. As I explained in the beginning, the Register of Information was under the lead of the European Banking Authority. Here for the major incident reporting and the cyber threats, ESMA has the lead, so the reporting will not be done in XBRL because they do not have the experience to develop the necessary taxonomies. That means that we opted for this reporting to use the regular reporting options that are standard available in OneGate, which means data entry, CSV, and XML. To be fully transparent with you, we have to disseminate to the European authorities in JSON format. This JSON format will not be published by the European authorities because it would create maybe some confusion with national implementation, with national requirements, but we will have to send the OneGate information into JSON format to the European authorities. You may ask us, why did you not use JSON then for data collection in Belgium? And also here, to be fully transparent, we do not have a JSON validation engine in OneGate, so we had to develop one specifically for this project, which would be quite costly and which would also be risky because the specifications, the technical specifications of the European authorities were not available in time. So I provide you here with a small slide of our meeting, a small screenshot of the slide of our meeting we had last week with the European authorities, in which they announced that we would receive the final technical specifications on the JSON format by yesterday, but unfortunately, even yesterday, we did not receive the specifications yet. So you can imagine that we were not able to take the risk to onboard the JSON format for data collection. We opted for the safe approach to do the data collection with data entry, CSV, and the well-known XML option available standard in OneGate. Also because we anticipate that the underlying format, XML or JSON, is not very important in the context where a lot of institutions will not automate their reportings. It is possible, of course. You can use XML to automate the reporting of incidents, also for cyber threats. This will be possible, but we anticipate that many of you will simply use the interface and go through the different fields that you have to complete and do this directly via the interface, via data entry. And so the underlying format is less relevant than other cases where you have to submit large volumes with a high frequency. Here it is for incidents. Many of you may never have an incident a year. Some may have a few incidents a day. So it depends on your situation, whether you want to invest in an automated solution. But you know that the data entry option via the interface will always be available. Also here, I refer again to the same website. So we have a website for the domain DOR in which you have the two components. You have the Register of Information, and then you have all the other reports that are relevant in the context of the major incident reporting and the significant cyber threats. So we will go through all 4 reports that I show on the screen right now. It is important to highlight here that you can use your company registration number, your KBO, without the extension, because ESMA does not require such an extension. So we simply use the company registration number as you're used to for a number of other reportings. And then I will also highlight here the fact that all of these templates will be available in 3 languages, English, Dutch, and French. And you can choose in your OneGate homepage which language you prefer. This will show you the templates in that language. Nothing will prohibit you from reporting in English in case you have chosen Dutch or the other way around, knowing, of course, that the English language will facilitate the analysis and the dissemination process within Europe afterwards. So there is a given preference of the European authorities, of course, to use English for this. Let me start with the first report, DORA Contact. That is very easy, and it has only one objective: to get the number of key persons within your institution that we can reach out to in case of problems, of crisis. We have preferred to give it a quarterly frequency with a deadline of T+10, which means that the first reference date will be the 31st of December 2024, so end of this year, with a deadline on the 10th of January, which is also used, of course, to ensure your appropriate OneGate access. As Thomas has already said, we require you to fill in 2 contact persons. The third one is optional, and the functional email address in the end of the template is also optional. So it is a very limited template that should be completed once a quarter. Now, that does not mean that you have to fill in each time the same information again. When you go to the next quarter, you can see, for instance, here for March 2025, that the status is initial when you open it for the first time. But when you click on the link and you go into the template, it will be completed automatically. So the data from the previous quarter are copied here automatically. If nothing has changed, the only thing you need to do is close it. So that is available on the right, close and send it, and the process is finished for you. In case you want to do an update, you can simply complete or overwrite the existing information and close afterwards, and the information is updated on our side, always with the same quarterly frequency, deadline T plus 10 days. Then the next report is somewhat more complicated, and it's the most important template within this presentation. As it is an incident reporting, of course, there is no fixed frequency. Luckily for you and for us, it will be on demand. So it is at the initiative of the reporting agent, of you, to introduce the incident. It is exactly the same as the PSD2 incident reporting in the domains IPB and IPP. So if you're used to that, it will be exactly the same. You go into the overview of the years and you click on the actual month. In this case, we are still December 2024. So you have to click on the month to introduce an incident right now that has occurred this morning or yesterday, for instance. One important remark here, as you may well know, is that for incidents, you have different phases. You have an initial notification, you have an intermediate report, you have a final report. That has nothing to do with the initial open and closed life cycles that you see here on the screen. So those are only linked to the life cycle status within OneGate. That has nothing to do with the phase of the incident that you are reported or that you have reported. So that is an important remark, just to make sure that there is no confusion on that side. When you go into the current month, we ask you to click on the new button to introduce a new line in control panel, so to initiate your incident reporting. And we will require you to provide us with an incident reference code. It will correspond to the field 3.1 in the ITS. The field 3.1 in the ITS says that the reference code is provided by the competent authority. We chose another approach in which we let you choose the incident reference code, because you know what the incident is about immediately before you submit it already, and you can choose it. The only thing that we require you to do is respect a certain pattern, a certain structure, so we have some kind of level playing field and consistency between the institutions. And so I provide you here with the structure that we have in mind right now that will be implemented in OneGate when we open our OneGate environment. And as you can see here, the structure is quite easy to follow. So first we start with 3 characters, MIR or SCT, depending on whether it is an incident or a cyber threat. Then you have the 10 characters of the company registration number. That is followed by the date, so year, month, day. And finally, we allow you to introduce some free text, but to have a limit on that, because we will use this incident reference code to communicate with the European authorities, with the ECB. We have put a limit to that with a minimum of 10 characters and a maximum of 30 capital letters without any other symbols or characters than those capital letters only. And I show you an illustration on the screen that can be used as an inspiration for your incident reporting. And the same will apply, by the way, for the cyber threats. That will be the second or the third report that I will explain. So very straightforward. In case you introduce a wrong code, you will immediately get an error and you will not be able to initialize a new line in control panel, and so you will not be able to submit your incident. Thanks to this reference code, of course, you can introduce multiple different incidents in one day, which is the reality, unfortunately. Multiple incidents can occur. It is perfectly possible from a technical point of view to introduce all of them on the same day. Then when we go into the template, so it is only one template with a number of sections. The most important field is actually the first, field 1.1 in the ITS, because that will trigger a certain validation process. As I explained, there are different phases in the reporting of an incident. You can start with an initial notification and then an intermediate report or multiple intermediate reports to end with a final report. And depending on this choice, additional fields must be completed. And that is very clearly visible on the left side. You see some kind of table of contents with all the chapters. And so that corresponds perfectly with the ITS. So you have the ITS fields 1.1 to 1.15 in the first block. Then there is a second block with the initial notification that contains the fields 2.1 to 2.10. Then the intermediate report are all the fields 3.2 to 3.35, because as you know, the field 3.1 has already been communicated by you when you created the incident, when you initiated a new line in control panel. And then finally, the fields 4.1 to 4.16 for the final report, which means that when you submit the final report, all of the 4 blocks must be completed correctly in order to be able to close the final report. A final report is required for every incident. In case you have all the information already available at the start of your submission, you do not need to provide us first with an initial notification. You can immediately go to the final report, but don't forget that you have to complete, of course, all the information that is required in the 4 blocks. The other way around is also possible. For instance, you provide us with an initial notification, but you already have information that is available for the intermediate part or the final part. You cannot already complete it. It will simply not be taken into account in the validation process. That will require you only to do the minimum that is necessary for the initial notification, but please provide us with the maximum information that is available on your side. This will help us in doing our analysis of the incident. Errors and warnings will guide you through the reporting and validation process. So for instance, here I showed you a partially filled in template where I only filled in the first 3 fields in the screen. So that is an initial notification where a lot of information is still missing. A number of warnings will be generated by the system. So it is up to you to correct those warnings. As you can see here, for instance, there is a warning that the field 1.4 is not completed. I again highlight here the number to the possibility to add rows. So in case there are multiple types, you can add simply the rows necessary for each type, and you will see this behavior come back in a number of fields in which multiple possibilities can be reported at once. And then you simply have to add the number of rows that you wish for. And you can continue this process until all of the warnings, all of the errors have disappeared, which means that you have correctly submitted your incident. There is a set of blocking errors as well. And that, of course, has to be aligned with the European authorities. We have to send this incident to the European authorities. So if the European authorities would block the incident while we have accepted it, it becomes a difficult situation, of course. So we try to copy the blocking errors on the side of the European authorities also in our system. This set of blocking errors will be limited just in order to smoothen the incident submission, because it is time critical, of course, to submit the incident. So we don't want to be blocking all kinds of incidents just because there is some kind of typo in the report. No, be as complete as possible. Please try to correct all the warnings, correct anyway all the blocking errors, and submit as soon as you can the incident to the National Bank of Belgium so that we can submit it to the European authorities and everybody can be notified that is involved in the incident. We will start with a setup of a number of validation rules implemented in our system. Depending on the data quality that we receive from you and on the interaction with the European authorities, we might have to add additional checks throughout the first weeks where we will build up our experience with the incident reporting and with our tool and with your submissions in our system and in the European systems as well. I have to highlight some specific and some open cases because until now we have not been able to test anything with the European authorities just because the JSON format is not finalized yet. Their system is not yet up and running. So for us, we have not been able to test anything. Everything we have been doing, what we have been preparing, is only on our side in our tool with our tools and our people. So it is still a purely Belgian implementation, which means that some cases are not yet fully finalized or not yet finally decided. For instance, for the incident reference code, as we will use it in the name of the report, it must, of course, follow the restrictions followed by the European authorities. So we hope that they will accept our naming convention that we have proposed right now, but we are still lobbying with them to get that accepted on their side. So there might be a slight change depending on their final decision on this. Same for the date time fields. Because in the ITS it is specified that they follow a certain ISO standard with a certain pattern. Right now the JSON file that we have at our disposal is slightly different, but if the JSON file is used for validation purposes, of course we need to follow the pattern in the JSON file and not in the ITS field. So that is an inconsistency that needs to be solved very quickly so we can implement the correct pattern in our system. Same for the duration. The ITS specifies a number of days, hours, and minutes, but they consider that certain incidents may take more than 99 days, which means that you need, of course, 3 characters in your pattern to be accepted, which is not foreseen by the ITS. So there is also a divergence between JSON and ITS. And we will have to follow, of course, the JSON pattern. So during your implementation, it is actually the JSON pattern that is more important than the ITS in this case, and we will provide you with the necessary documentation in our reporting protocol that we will publish on our website. Boolean, something similar. In the ITS, it is specified to be yes or no. In JSON and in OneGate, we use the more natural Boolean values true and false. And for percentages, in general, in XBRL reportings and XML reportings, we want them to be between 0 and 1. Here, the percentages must be real percentages. They must be reported between 0 and 100. But the percentage sign must be excluded, so it may not be present in the data. And they require us to report with 1 decimal. So some rounding may apply in case you have more decimals that are available at your disposal and you want to report it in the incident template. As I said in the beginning, maybe some institutions are willing to invest and to automate the reporting of the incidents. That will be perfectly possible, and we will help you in this in case you have questions. As I said in my first presentation, you can always export the report once you have introduced the data. So this gives you a perfectly valid illustration of how the XML file should look like. When you look at the XML structure, you will see that it is quite different from other implementations that we have done in the past for supervisory reportings, for statistical reportings. But that is because we wanted our DORA implementation to be fully aligned with the JSON format that is imposed to us by the European authorities. And as you can see on the left-hand side, you have the OneGate XML output. On the right-hand side, you have the JSON output. And so you can see immediately that they are fully equivalent, which is logical. And they are also very, very similar with regard to the properties that are being used in JSON and in OneGate XML. Some important considerations for the incident reporting. Once you have completed the incident and you have solved all of the warnings and the errors, a revalidation in the end is still necessary because this will trigger the dissemination to the European authorities. So the status of the report will always be to validate, even though you have respected all of the validation rules. Why do we do that? Because otherwise we would have to send a report to the European authorities every time you save the report. So we wanted to get the dissemination only in the end when you are happy with your incident submission, that in the end you trigger yourself the dissemination process by validating the report. In case all the issues are solved, the reporting status will simply become open, okay. In case there were still warnings, of course, the warnings will still remain present in the report, but the report will have been sent to the European authorities, which is important in a time-critical process as incident reporting. What we will do, very similar as the Register for Information with the EBA interaction, there will be something similar with the ESMA. There will also be some kind of automated interaction with them. They will also provide us with an additional feedback report that we will put within OneGit in all transparency. Unfortunately, we have not been able to test that yet, so we do not yet know how that will work in practice, but it will work in a very similar way as the Register of Information, which means that you will receive the validation report. It will give you an accepted or a rejection status. In case it is accepted, you can close the report. In case it is rejected, you need to adapt your report to correct the issues that have been highlighted by the European authorities. Of course, it is our goal, our objective to prepare all of the validations within OneGit so you do not get negative surprises when you send it to the European authorities, but we can never avoid that there may be some kind of synchronization issues between the two, and that we may have temporary differences between the two, and that the rejection status occurs. So please correct it then as soon as possible. Also here, a very important part of the process is to close the report after you have completed the incident template. You can close the report even though it still has a warning status. That is not a problem at all. But the closing process here is even more important because this will trigger the internal NBB notification process. So in case you have submitted your incident, you have revalidated it, it has been sent to the European authorities, close it immediately afterwards so we can inform the NBB analysts who are working on your institution that there is an incident that they have to look into and that they can start working on the information that you provided. You shouldn't be afraid to close the report because contrary to a lot of other supervisory reportings, here you can reopen the report yourself. So once it is closed, it is up to you to reopen the incident in case you want to update the incident. This is necessary if you want to pass, of course, from an initial notification to the intermediate report or to the final report. So you can simply reopen the incident. You see the information you provided last time, and you can simply complete it or even overwrite it in case you have new information that makes the previous information obsolete. That is perfectly possible. That's also why I mentioned here on the slide, in case you have already introduced, for instance, an intermediate report that is fully valid, but you have additional information that you would provide us with, and you have not yet reached the final report status, you can simply update your intermediate report without changing the type of submission. It's still an intermediate report. It is just a little bit more up to date. And so that is why you should not be afraid to close the report because you can reopen it at your own initiative. It is also possible that you have classified an incident as major and afterwards you think, no, it should be reclassified as non-major. That is also possible via this same approach in which you reopen the incident and you reclassify it as not a major incident. Also, in the case of reopenings, I have to highlight once more that it's very important to revalidate it for dissemination purposes and to close it for notification purposes when you have done your update. Then the third report in the list is the significant cyber threats. I can be very short on the significant cyber threat template because it is very similar to the DORA MIR approach. It's of course a different template, but it's very similar. As you can see, the look and feel is exactly the same. You also have no fixed frequency, so it's also at your initiative that you can initiate a new cyber threat. It follows the same procedure. You simply click on New, you introduce your unique reference code. This time you have to start with SCT because it is a significant cyber threat. And then on top of that, you can complete the template. This is only one template with 20 fields, so it's a little shorter and easier than the incident reporting. And also the same principles apply. So if you want to close the incident, the cyber threat, you have to revalidate. So it is disseminated and you have to close it. So it is being notified to the analysts within the National Bank of Belgium. So please revalidate and close always every submission of your cyber threat as well. Also, exactly the same as for the incidents. If you want to update a cyber threat, that's perfectly possible. You can reopen it yourself and afterwards revalidate and close it again. And you have updated the cyber threat and you have delivered the most recent information to your supervisor. Then I come back to the last report, which is DORA MIR test. It's actually a copy of the official DORA MIR report. It will be available in production environment and it will be used by you for testing purposes, only for testing purposes. So you do not need for the incident reporting, when you want to prepare for incident reporting, you do not need to have an access to the testing environment. So that is different from the register of information. Here you can do it directly in production environment. This report will be deactivated on the 17th of January 2025 to avoid all confusion. Of course, all official incidents from 17th of January onwards must use the official report. So that's why we deactivate it. But in case you would like to automate the incident reporting and you want to test your XML submissions, of course, you can do that using this DORA MIR test. Or in case you would prefer, we can open this also in testing environment for you. That depends on your wishes. Just let us know and we will try to accommodate that for you. And as Thomas already highlighted, we require every institution to report a mock-up incident, an initial notification. And this will be available by the end of this week. We will open up the DORA MIR test report in production environment with almost all validation rules, or if possible, all validation rules included in the report already. The deadline for the reporting will be Friday, the 10th of January 2025, which is exactly the same deadline as DORA Contact. There will be no dissemination of this mock-up incident because it's purely for testing purposes, so we will not send that to the European authorities, but still, we want you to close the report when you're finished. This acknowledges that you have submitted your test, and it will test on our side the full notification procedure that we have put in place for the instance. So this is also a useful test for our system, for OneGate and the notification procedure that is put in place. Because it's very important for us that we know that you are ready. We will send reminders for both reports on Monday, the 31st, the 13th of January. So the first working day after the deadline, you will receive a reminder sent to the company administrator registered in our master data application on Monday. So please complete it before to avoid unnecessary reminders. But be aware that it's very important for us to do this correctly on your side because it's a good test for you and a good test for us as well, which is crucial in case of time-critical reportings as incidents. So that is for me the conclusion on the DORA, MIR and cyber threats. Now I get back to Thomas for some conclusions, I think.
Mark, thank you for the very clear explanation. I just briefly wanted to conclude with an overview of the different reporting obligations. We have 5 in total, as explained. The first 3 items, of course, correspond to the official DORA obligations, the reporting of the register of information, of the major ICT-related incidents, and of the significant cyber threats. Those are the first 3 lines. Moreover, as explained, we expect you to send us a mock-up report of an initial incident notification by the 10th of January. And this is to demonstrate that you are capable of doing so, that you have access, that you have the right credentials. And we also expect you to provide us with the contact information by that same date, and that is the 5th line. We have arrived at the end of our presentation. We now arrive at the Q&A part. I've received a lot of questions, so that's very good. As said previously, we will focus on those questions that really address the topic of this webinar. So it's not the intention to replace, for instance, the Q&As of the ESAs or the European Commission. So, and of course, some topics are maybe too bilateral in nature to discuss them here. But still, I think we can address a lot of the questions you asked. First question we received is whether we will share our slides and also the recording And that is indeed the intention. So you will receive both the slides and the recording of this presentation afterwards. Then Mark, and I think you have answered this during your presentation, but there was also a question on what kind of testing environment would be available to test the correctness of files. I presume mostly in the context of the register of information, maybe also in the context of the incident reporting. So maybe you can briefly repeat what you have said about this.
Yes, no problem. So for the register of information, we will open our testing environment in January based on the taxonomy of the European Banking Authority that will be published by the end of next week. So if you have an access to a OneGate testing environment, you simply need to extend this access to the domain DOR. And there you can upload files for the register of information in XBRL XML or XBRL CSV. Both options will be available by the end of January. For the incident reporting, we have prepared also some kind of testing report where we require you to do a mock-up incident. It can be an initial notification, that is the minimum. You can, of course, use this testing report to do whatever you want, whatever you like. You can also export the output to see what it looks like in XML. So that will be available. That is available in the production environment. So that is different between the register of information that is available in testing environment in January and the incident reporting that is available by the end of this week in production environment. But both of them will help you to prepare the necessary steps to be able to report in the production period for both components of DORA.
Very well. I hope this answers the question. And then there are also questions on the fact that the DORA domain is not yet visible for, at least not for all participants yet. But I think this is normal, right? You have explained that it should become visible soon.
Yes.
And there was also one person that said, I see the option of the XBRL, not the CSV. I'm not sure if this is related or if this is still something different.
Yes, I can maybe reply to that question with regard to XML, XBRL, and CSV. So if you provide us with an XML file or an XBRL file, you can upload it via the homepage of our OneGate application. If you have a CSV file, so a CSV file contains the information of one single form. So you need to enter into the report because otherwise OneGate will not know to which form your CSV belongs. So you need to enter into the report, go to the form that you want to upload with your CSV file that you have prepared somewhere else. And then you click on the form, you import CSV. There is a button import, and then you can choose import CSV. When you import the CSV file, it will upload the data within the CSV directly into the template. But it's very important that you have the close link between the template that you have selected and the CSV file, because the number of columns, of course, must be identical in both of them. Then with regard to the access and the visibility, right now the DOR domain already exists in production environment and in testing environment. Of course, in the production environment, it is still empty because we did not yet create any reporting obligations for this sector. So it is perfectly logical that you may have access to DOR, but it will be completely empty. In the testing environment, for the time being, for most of you, it will be empty as well. Only for the participants of the dry run, they can still look back to their XBRL CSV reporting of the DORA dry run. But remember that this DORA dry run does not use the taxonomy that will be used for the production environment. So the output of the dry run will not pass the validation process in production environment.
Okay, thank you very well and very clear. Then there was a question on what I said on the fact that third county branches are out of scope. What I meant is, of course, and this is fully in line with the DORA regulation, EU branches of non-EU entities, because, of course, the others are part of the legal entities in the EU and have to be reported, for instance, in the register of information as well. So what I meant there was specifically EU branches of non-EU entities. Then there are a few questions on the deadline for the register of information, but I think we were very clear on that. So the first reporting will be on the 30th of April 2025 with a reference date of the 31st of March 2025. There's also the question whether this deadline of 30th of April is the MEB deadline or the ESA's deadline, but I think Mark also explained that as soon as you upload this information into our systems, it's also uploaded to the ESA system. And so to be clear, it has to be in their systems before the 30th of April. So please don't wait until 5 minutes before the deadline to submit your register. Do it well on time. Then there was also a question on the deadline for the major incident reporting, but I think we have been clear on that as well. So the idea is clearly that you report as of the 17th of January all your major ICT-related incidents, and on a voluntary basis also your significant cyber threats via this new process. So the deadline of April is not for the major incident reporting, it's for it's not the deadline of April is not for the major incident reporting, it's for the reporting of the register of information. Then there are a few questions on the mock-up incident. So there is a person who asks why this is necessary. I think we try to explain. We want to assure that you have the capability of doing so, that you have access to the right DORA domain, that you have the right credentials to do so. And by sending us this mock-up incident, we will see that everything works fine on your side. There was also a person who asked whether it would be sufficient to send an initial notification, and this is indeed the case. We don't necessarily want you to also send an intermediate or a final version, although you can, of course, you can play around with it, but at least we want to see an initial notification of every institution in scope. There's a question whether there would be some feedback in the case of a mock-up incident. That's not really the idea. The idea is more that we verify that you have access to our systems and that you readily can report an incident if you would have been if you would be confronted with one. And so that's all we want to assure with this kind of test. There was also a question on at what level major incident reporting needs to happen. So I think we clearly explained that major incident reporting is at the level of individual financial entities. So if your financial entity is in scope of DORA, if the classification criteria for a major ICT-related incident are met, then you report it individually, so on a solo level in our OneGate application for that financial entity. There were some questions on the reference code for the major incidents, Mark. Not sure if we can respond to this right now, but there was a question whether it would be possible to insert numbers in the incident reporting to link it with the ticket number, or whether this could be envisaged later. I think, to be clear, that in the taxonomy and in the ITS, there's also a different field for the financial entity reference number. So that, of course, you can fill in the way you want. From Mark's explanation, but maybe you can clarify, it is my understanding that at least part of the incident reference codes that should be provided to us is free text. So I suppose that institutions could also use numbers in that part of the incident reference code. And then there's a question whether the reference code only exists of capitals or whether a combination with numbers is also accepted. So maybe, Mark, you can briefly reply on that.
Yes, indeed, it's a very good question. We have made up a reference code that reflects a little bit the requirements of the business and of our technical team. The figures were not yet included. Right now, we only proposed a reference code with capital letters only to avoid issues with the capital letters and the smaller characters, but figures were not yet on the table. I understand that this might be useful for the industry, so I think we can be open on that. Maybe we can have an internal discussion with IT and our business to discuss that and to accept both capital letters and numbers, so that both of them are available within the in the reference code. That I don't see any technical obstacles for that. Nor on our side, nor on the side of the naming convention towards the European authorities. So it's certainly a suggestion, if that would be useful, that we could take into account. I also want to use this opportunity, because there are a lot of questions apparently, that we will publish maybe some kind of Q&A on our website in case we were not able to treat all the questions correctly, or in case you have questions that you come up after the webinar. We will maintain a Q&A that will be useful also in the context of the future reporting of incidents and the register that we can put up to date regularly on our website as well.
Very well. And to be clear, as I already said, in any case, there will be a field specifically for the financial entity reference code. But of course, that's not the competent authority reference code. And let's see what we can do about this request. Then there is a question, what the MBB expects in terms of voluntary notification of significant cyber threats. So I would say we don't have very concrete expectations right now. We provide the channel, and it's a voluntary option for you to submit such cyber threats. Of course, if you will receive them, we will treat them appropriately, and maybe we will share information with other stakeholders, but there is no obligation. And so let's see if you find this a useful functionality, yes or no. There's also a question whether for a financial group that consists of different types of entities, for instance, the examples given of banks, insurers, asset managers, whether they can send one consolidated submission to one competent authority, for instance, the National Bank of Belgium. So this is typically not the case unless all these financial entities are under our supervision. So, but I gave previously the example of a financial group which has banking entities for which the competent authority is the ECB, and then maybe which is also an insurance undertaking, and then still an asset company. And so in that particular case, the financial group would have to send 3 different registers to 3 different competent authorities. So we only want to receive the register that is relevant for the financial entities that are under our supervision. So we don't want to see then for instance, the asset management company, which is under the supervision of the FSMA. There are some people, Mark, that indicate that there were some differences in the template columns in OneGate reporting as compared to the ITS during the dry run, and they are questioning whether whether the OneGate platform will be adapted as per the latest ITS of the register. And there's a similar question which asks whether our forms will be fully in line with the EBA templates for the ITS for the register of information. So I think we can confirm that, right?
Yes, indeed. So we will use the EBA taxonomy to implement our system. The templates are generated automatically based on the taxonomy, which means that in Europe, every country, every institution, every authority that is using that taxonomy should have the same visualization of the templates. If, of course, there are differences between the ITS or the Excel templates, in our case, the XBRL taxonomy is considered as the Holy Bible. So that is the basis for the exchange of the information. So that is what will be visible in OneGate. So if you look into the XBRL taxonomy of the EBA, the visualizations will be exactly the same as the visualizations in OneGate because they are generated automatically. So in principle, all of them should be identical on the same line.
Very well. Then there are some very detailed questions on, for instance, list separators in CSV, whether instead of a comma, a semicolon can be used. And yeah, that may be the first question. I suppose not. I suppose the precise format has to be followed.
Indeed. So as indicated during the slides and the presentation, the format is imposed. So it is a flat file. There are no regional settings. It is simply what has been imposed by the IT department implementation. So if you use XBRL CSV, it will be a comma. If you use the regular CSV within OneGate, it will be a semicolon. That is the convention to be used when you work with CSV files.
Okay, and then there is a question, and this question refers to the time-critical nature of incident reporting. And the question is asked whether it's possible to upload a CSV or XML into OneGate without having to retype the various ITS fields 2, 3, 4. I'm not sure what exactly this means because, of course, the idea is not that that people have to retype the form. They can simply fill it in. They can also prepare a CSV or an XML, I suppose. But the end goal should be that the incident is properly reported in our tool, right? So I'm not sure if this question makes any sense for you, Mark, or if you understand what is being referred to.
I can only suggest and encourage the institutions to type in the data in OneGate and export it in CSV format so they know what format is expected. Of course, we need to identify to which field every input is related. So there certain key may be necessary. That depends on the structure of the template and the implementation in OneGate.
Okay, then there's a person that asks, which says the XBRL CSV seems like a very interesting option. Do you plan to roll out XBRL CSV also for other XBRL reportings like CoreRep and FinRep or Solvency II?
That is a relevant question. So we have implemented XBRL CSV for DORA because it is necessary for us to report the DORA reports in XBRL CSV to Euclid of the EBA. Now it is such that the EBA imposes the XBRL CSV format for all reports that we have to send to them by the end of 2025, which means that we must be able for all supervisory reportings to the ECB and the EBA to provide this XBRL CSV option, which probably means that we will also provide this option to the industry. So I would guess right now that we would be able to accept XBRL CSV for all supervisory reportings of the banks by the end of the summer, beginning of autumn. But that's only for the banks and the investment firms. For insurance companies, for instance, in the context of Solvency II, EIOPA, the European authority, is only right now considering the XBRL CSV option as a future option. So it will not be implemented in the very short term. So there we will still continue with XBRL XML for quite some time. But for the banks and the investment firms under the remit of the ECB or EBA, they will have the additional option of XBRL CSV after the summer as well.
There are a few questions that are slightly out of scope. They are on the IT risk questionnaire that we send on a yearly basis to most of the institutions. The question is whether DORA will also be reflected in them, and I guess it depends on the type of institution you are, and you will find out soon. But this is somewhat unrelated to the topic of today. And there's also a person that asks whether there are similar deadlines for DORA reportings and the IT questionnaire, but these are two rather separate initiatives, so there is no link between them. Yeah, there's a person that asks whether we can hurry up with publishing our circulars, and we will of course try to do so, but we want the information of that we want the standards to be fully published on the website of the European Union before we can do so. So most other questions I've listed here, I think they are slightly out of scope. There are, for instance, people who ask whether they can use another identifier for third-party providers as compared to the lay or the EUID, but there I have to refer to the ITS. We will stick to that document. I must admit that since we started Q&A, most likely some additional questions have arrived in the chat, but I haven't been fully capable of processing them, so I can briefly go over them to see if we missed anything important. So there's a question, will OneGate user guide on major incident reporting be published? So I think you have referred to the website that you will create, right, Mark?
Indeed, that is a relevant question and correct. We will update our website with some kind of a reporting protocol that can be considered as a manual, a guide on how to deal with incidents. For the register of information, of course, all of the information or a lot of the information is available within the XBRL taxonomy. So that will be a protocol that we are used to have for FinRep, CoreRep, Solvency II. That will be very similar. But for incident reporting, it's completely new. So there we will be more extensive in illustrating how OneGate works and how the companies can deal with the filling in of the templates on incident reporting. So the manual will be published. We hope to do this also, of course, before Christmas. As soon as possible. But since we have still some open questions and discussion topics with the European authorities, it's quite difficult because we are working with a moving target and still we want to move forward to help you prepare for the reporting. And on the other hand, on the backend side, which we have to take into account, of course, as well, not all the aspects are yet finalized. So please be a little bit patient on this, but it will come on still this year.
Thank you, Mark. And then there's a question, if a major incident is submitted at group level of the financial institution for multiple EU countries, do we still need to submit a major incident report to the MBB? And the answer is yes, of course, because we try to explain, and this is also based on the level 1 regulation and the technical standards, that the reporting happens on the level of individual financial entities, so not at group level, not in an aggregated manner. We expect you to send an incident report for every incident at the financial entity that meets the criteria for that financial entity. Then there are, again, people that say that they cannot see the DORA domain yet, but that's normal, right? We explained
Yes.
that. There's a question whether the mock-up incident is on a major incident or on a cyber threat. We want to test your capability to submit the initial report of a major incident with that. Of course, it's a mock-up incident, so it should not contain any information on the real incident, of course, but it's simply to test whether you would be able to submit an incident in our platform once you're confronted with one after the 17th of January. Then there's a question whether the FSMA is also intending to use the OneGate platform for reporting of entities under their supervision. That's, of course, a question for the FSMA. We are in contact with them. We exchange, but I suggest that you ask the question to them. If every entity has to report its own incidents, will there be a consolidation in OneGate on the company group level? So, of course, we will, if we see multiple incidents that are coming from the same group, we will try to link them. But again, the reporting happens on the level of a financial entity, so on a solo level, not on an aggregated level. So a question on whether we will provide some kind of platform for exchange of information. No, of course, all the information we receive, we will treat it confidentially. If based on the information we receive, we deem it's necessary to inform the industry, we will do it in such a way that the financial entity who reported this information will never be, it can never be identified based on that information. So there's a question whether it's possible to use a PGP key to communicate sensitive information with MBB contracts. I suppose that it is not possible. As we explained, we expect to register information via OneGate platform in the DORA ROI reporting. Then I think we will stop here and we will try to treat all the questions we received afterwards via our website if we think it's relevant for the for the whole sector. And if not, we provided our email addresses to you. So if you have very specific questions on your very specific situation, don't hesitate to reach out and we'll try to respond to them as quickly as possible. So I think we stop here. Thank you very much for your attention and looking forward to work with you under DORA and looking forward to receive your questions if you still have any. Have a nice afternoon and see you soon.
Thank you.